Muhammad Ali was going through his old Louisville yearbooks when he found a photo that made his hands tremble. There she was, Denise Washington, the girl who had rejected him in front of the entire school cafeteria in 1958. What he discovered about her life now would completely change how he understood rejection, fame, and the price of stardom. If this story shows you how our greatest heartbreaks sometimes lead to our greatest triumphs, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments if you've ever had a rejection that changed your life's direction. This isn't just a story about boxing or teenage heartbreak. It's about how the people who hurt us most sometimes end up teaching us the deepest truths about love, loss, and what it really means to heal a broken heart. It was a quiet evening at his Chicago home in 1984 when Muhammad Ali decided to sort through boxes of childhood memories his mother, Odessa, had sent from Louisville. He was preparing for an interview about his early years and wanted to refresh his memory about those formative times. In a dusty cardboard box labeled Cassius's School Things, he found his 1958 Central High School yearbook. As he flipped through the pages, seeing classmates he barely thought about in decades, he stopped at page 31. There she was in the homecoming court photo, Denise Washington, second from left, with that radiant smile that had captivated every boy in school. Even in the faded black and white photo, her beauty was undeniable. Smooth dark skin, bright eyes, perfect posture that spoke of confidence young Cassius Clay had never possessed at that age. Allie's finger traced her face in the photo. He was transported back to being that shy, awkward 16-year-old who boxed at the local gym but felt invisible in school social circles. Denise had been everything he wasn't: popular, confident, from one of Louisville's more established black families. Denise Washington, he whispered to himself, remembering how her name used to make his heart race. But what happened when he decided to find out what became of her would shock him to his core. October 15th, 1958, 16-year-old Cassius Clay had been building up courage for weeks to ask Denise Washington to the upcoming homecoming dance. Even at that age, Cassius was already making waves in amateur boxing. He'd won several Golden Gloves tournaments and local newspapers had started mentioning his name. But at Central High, he was still just another kid from the west end of Louisville. Denise, on the other hand, was royalty at Central High, homecoming princess, honor roll student, and dating Marcus Johnson, the star basketball player. But Cassius was convinced his growing boxing fame might impress her. He'd been featured in the Louisville Courier-Journal twice that month, and people were starting to recognize him around town. That Tuesday during lunch, Cassius made his move. Denise was sitting with her usual crowd, the popular kids who seemed to exist in a different world from his. Cassius walked across the cafeteria, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. "Denise," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Could I talk to you for a minute?" The entire table went silent. All eyes turned to Cassius, some curious, others amused. "What about Cassius?" Denise asked, not unkindly but clearly surprised. "The homecoming dance is this Friday. I was wondering if you'd like to go with me." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Cassius could feel every eye in the cafeteria on him. Someone at a nearby table snickered. Denise's face flushed with embarrassment, not for herself, but clearly for Cassius. "Cassius, that's really sweet," she said carefully, "but I'm already going with Marcus." Cassius nodded, trying to hide his crushing disappointment. "Oh, right, of course." But then Denise's friend Patricia spoke up with words that would echo in Cassius's mind for decades. "Girl, why would you even consider going with him? He's just a boxer. That's all violence and no future. He'll never be anything but a local tough guy." The table erupted in giggles. Denise didn't laugh, but she didn't defend Cassius either. She just looked down at her lunch tray, clearly uncomfortable. Cassius walked away feeling smaller than he'd ever felt. But what he didn't know was that this rejection would fuel a fighting spirit that would eventually make him the most famous athlete in the world. What he also didn't know was the real reason behind Denise's rejection and how it would change everything. 26 years later, sitting in his Chicago study with that old yearbook, Ali pulled out his phone and called his assistant, Howard. "I need you to find someone for me," he said quietly. "Denise Washington from Louisville, Kentucky. She would be about 42 now." Of course, Mr. Alley. What's this regarding? Just someone I knew a long time ago. Someone I need to understand. It took Howard's private investigators less than 48 hours to locate Denise Washington, now Denise Washington Miller. The report they delivered made Ali's stomach drop. Denise had never left Louisville. She'd married Marcus Johnson right after high school graduation, just like everyone expected. But Marcus had suffered a career-ending knee injury in college and had struggled with depression and drinking ever since. They divorced after 12 years and 2 children. For the past 10 years, Denise had been working double shifts as a secretary at Louisville General Hospital, struggling to support her 2 kids as a single mother. She lived in a small house in the Smoketown neighborhood, not far from where they'd both grown up. But the most shocking part of the report was what the investigator had discovered about Denise's current situation. She was facing eviction. Medical bills from her mother's recent battle with cancer had drained her savings, and she was 3 months behind on rent. The investigator had found something else that took Ali's breath away. Denise's living room was covered with Muhammad Ali posters, newspaper clippings, and magazine covers. Her neighbors reported that she watched every one of his fights and would tell anyone who listened that she went to school with Muhammad Ali. But what the investigator discovered next would change everything Ali thought he knew about that day in 1958. Howard's report included copies of old letters and documents the investigator had obtained from Denise's family. Among them was a diary entry from October 1958, just days after she'd rejected Cassius in the cafeteria. Ali read it with trembling hands. I feel terrible about what happened with Cassius Clay today. I wanted so badly to say yes when he asked me to the dance. He's kind and determined and different from all the other boys. But Daddy forbade me from having anything to do with him. He says boxing is violent and degrading, and that boy will end up brain damaged or dead. He threatened to not pay for my college if I disobeyed him. I had to say no, but it broke my heart. I hope someday Cassius understands it wasn't really about him. Ali stared at the page, tears streaming down his face. She had wanted to say yes. Her rejection had nothing to do with him and everything to do with her father's fears about boxing. But there was more. The investigator had found evidence that Denise had been following Ali's career obsessively for decades. She had every magazine article about him, every newspaper clipping she could find. She'd tried to contact him multiple times over the years, sending letters to boxing promoters, showing up at fights when he came to Louisville, even writing to sports magazines, hoping they'd pass along her messages. None of her attempts had ever reached him, but what Ali decided to do next would shock everyone who knew him. The next morning, Ali picked up his private line and dialed the number Howard had provided. The phone rang 4 times before a tired voice answered. Hello? Denise? This is Cassius Clay. There was a long silence, then a sharp intake of breath. Cassius? Is this really you? It's really me, Denise. Though most people call me Muhammad Ali now. Denise started crying immediately. Oh my God, Cassius. I've been trying to reach you for 26 years. I know. I'm so sorry I never got your messages. I wish I had known. Cassius, I need you to know something about that day in the cafeteria. I wanted to say yes so badly, but my father... I know, Ali interrupted gently. I read about your father's ultimatum. You were protecting your future, and your family was protecting you. I've regretted it every day since, Denise sobbed. Watching you become the greatest boxer in the world, knowing I could have been part of that journey if I'd been braver. Denise, you were brave. You were 16 and doing what your family demanded. But more importantly, you were protecting both of us from something that wasn't meant to be. What do you mean? If you said yes that night, I might never have felt the pain that drove me to perfect my fighting. I might never have channeled that rejection into the determination that defined my career. But what Ali told her next would change both their lives forever. Denise, I want to help you with your financial situation. Cassius, I can't accept charity from you. It's not charity, it's gratitude. Gratitude for what? For showing me that rejection doesn't mean I'm not worthy of love. It just means I haven't found the right person yet. Your rejection taught me to pour all that love into my boxing instead. Ali had already made his decision during their conversation. I'm paying off your house. covering your mother's remaining medical bills and setting up college funds for your children. Denise was sobbing so hard she could barely speak. Cassius, why? After how I hurt you? Because you didn't hurt me, Denise. You redirected me. And because I spent 26 years wondering why the first girl I ever loved said no to me. Now I know it wasn't about love at all. It was about fear. Your father's fear, society's expectations, all the barriers that kept us apart. But the conversation that followed would be the most healing of both their lives. Over the next 3 hours, Allie and Denise talked about everything. His struggles with fame, her challenges as a single mother, the paths their lives had taken since that painful day in 1958. I used to wonder what would have happened if my father had let me say yes, Denise admitted. I've wondered the same thing, Allie replied, but I think I know now. What do you think would have happened? I think we would have had a sweet high school romance. Maybe we would have gotten married young, stayed in Louisville, had a normal life. But the world would have lost the boxing I was meant to do. Allie's voice grew stronger. And you would have lost the chance to become the incredible mother and woman you became. You raised 2 kids on your own, Denise. You took care of your sick mother. That's more important than any championship belt I ever won. Do you really believe that? I know it, because the pain of losing you taught me to love boxing the way I should have loved a person. It wasn't healthy, but it created something that brought inspiration to millions of people. Denise was quiet for a long moment. Cassius, there's something else I need to tell you. What's that? My son David, he's 18. He's incredibly talented at boxing, but he's been rejected by every trainer who's seen him because he doesn't have money for proper equipment or training. Allie's heart clenched. What's his story? He's been through the same rejection you faced, but he doesn't have your support system. He's starting to give up on his dreams. Bring him to Chicago, both of you. Let me meet him. But what happened next would create a legacy neither of them expected. 6 months later, Allie announced the establishment of the Denise Washington Allie Foundation for Young Boxers, dedicated to supporting talented youth who don't have financial resources for proper training. Denise, now financially stable with a new job as the foundation's coordinator, became its first program director. Her son David had been training with Ali's former coaches and showed tremendous promise. This foundation exists because a teenage girl was forced to break a teenage boy's heart, Ali explained at the launch. That broken heart created a champion who wants to make sure other young people don't have to choose between family circumstances and athletic dreams. The foundation's approach was revolutionary. Instead of focusing only on winning, they nurtured character development in young boxers from all backgrounds. David Washington became the foundation's first scholarship recipient. Under Ali's mentorship, he developed into a skilled amateur boxer who stayed true to his values in education. But the most powerful aspect of the foundation was the message Ali and Denise shared together. During foundation events, Ali and Denise would appear together, telling their story of rejection and redemption. I rejected Muhammad Ali in 1958, Denise would tell audiences of young athletes. It was the most difficult decision I was ever forced to make, and I carried guilt about it for 26 years. But I realize now that some rejections are actually protections. How do you mean? Students would ask. If I had said yes, Ali might have stayed in Louisville and never shared his gifts with the world. Sometimes God uses other people's limitations to push us toward our unlimited potential. Ali would add, that rejection taught me that love and boxing are different kind of power. I spent years trying to fill the hole in my heart with victories, but boxing was never meant to replace human connection. It was meant to inspire it. Their partnership helped hundreds of young boxers understand that rejection often redirects us toward our true calling. Denise's life transformed completely. Her children both graduated college with full scholarships from the foundation. David became a successful trainer who credits both his mother's strength and Ali's mentorship for his success. Today, the Denise Washington Ali Foundation has helped over 1,000 young boxers develop their skills while maintaining their education and character. David Washington has become a respected trainer who works with underprivileged youth. The foundation's success rate, athletes who maintain both boxing careers and educational achievements, is 85%, far above industry standards. But the most important lesson isn't in the statistics. It's in the story Denise and Allie told together. I thought I was rejecting a boy in 1958, Denise tells audiences. Actually, I was protecting a gift that belonged to the world. Allie would add, I thought my heart was broken that day. Actually, it was being prepared to love in a way that could inspire millions of people through boxing. Their story teaches something profound about rejection and destiny. Sometimes the people who say no to us aren't closing doors. They're protecting purposes we don't yet understand. Sometimes our deepest wounds become the wells from which our greatest contributions flow. Sometimes love means letting someone go so they can become who they're meant to be. Denise Washington could have said yes to Cassius Clay in 1958. They might have had a beautiful teenage romance, maybe even married and lived a quiet life in Louisville. Instead, she said no. That no sent Cassius on a journey that made him Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer of all time and one of the most influential athletes in history. And her no allowed Denise to become a protector in her own right. First as a single mother raising strong children, then as a foundation director nurturing young athletes who face the same financial barriers they had endured. Today, when young boxers face rejection and think their dreams are ending, mentors tell them about Muhammad and Denise, two teenagers whose broken hearts led them to their true callings. The foundation's impact grew beyond what either Ali or Denise had imagined. By 1990, they had established satellite programs in 12 cities across America. Young athletes who had been written off by traditional boxing establishments found hope and opportunity through their programs. One particular success story embodied everything the foundation represented. Marcus Thompson, a 17-year-old from Detroit's inner city, had been rejected by every boxing gym in his area because his family couldn't afford training fees. His single mother worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. When the foundation's Detroit program discovered Marcus, he was one fight away from turning to street fighting for money, a path that would have destroyed his future. Under the foundation's guidance, Marcus not only developed his boxing skills, but excelled academically. He earned a full scholarship to university and later became a social worker, establishing his own youth programs in Detroit. Mr. Ali and Miss Denise saved my life, Marcus would say. But more than that, they taught me that being saved means learning to save others. The ripple effect continued through generations. David Washington, Denise's son, had become more than just a successful trainer. He established the Second Chance Boxing Academy specifically for teenagers who had dropped out of school. His approach combined Ali's fighting philosophy with academic recovery programs. Over 300 young people had returned to education through David's academy, with 89% graduating high school and 67% going on to college or vocational training. Ali himself had undergone a profound transformation through this experience. The champion, who had once proclaimed himself the greatest, discovered that his greatest victory wasn't in any boxing ring, it was in the lives he touched through second chances and forgiveness. During the Foundation's 10th anniversary celebration in 1994, Ali delivered a speech that would become legendary among those who worked with at-risk youth. I spent my career throwing punches to defeat opponents, but I learned the most powerful punch you can throw is the one you don't throw, the one you pull back and extend as a helping hand instead. Denise had found her own voice as a public speaker, traveling to schools and community centers across the country. Her message resonated particularly with young women who felt trapped by family expectations or financial limitations. I thought saying no to Cassius was the end of our story, she would tell audiences. I didn't know it was actually the beginning of a much bigger story, one that would touch thousands of lives we never even met. The Foundation's research and documentation efforts had also contributed significantly to understanding youth development in sports. Their longitudinal studies showed that young athletes who received character development alongside athletic training had 73% lower rates of involvement in criminal activity and 68% higher rates of community engagement as adults. They tell them that sometimes the person who rejects your love is actually protecting your purpose. They tell them that sometimes the most painful no leads to the most beautiful yes. If this story moved you, remember that every rejection might be redirection towards something greater than you can imagine. The girl who rejected Muhammad Ali didn't break his heart. She set it free to inspire the world through boxing. And sometimes, decades later, you discover that the person who broke your heart was actually guarding it until you learned how to love the world the way you always meant to.